Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. Welcome to our May meetup event. My name is Jim Lane. I'm joined this evening by our social media organizer, Danita Patel. Alex and Jody were not able to join us this evening. They send their regards. For those who are not familiar with our group, NoVA UX is a meetup for UX professionals in the Northern Virginia and Washington, D.C. metro areas. Although we have members joining us sometimes from all over the US, sometimes even overseas. Always excited to see our friends from other countries. Our group has been hosting monthly talks and workshops since the group was founded in 2012. We're delighted you all could join us here this evening, so thank you. So before I introduce tonight's talk, I'll take care of a few of the usual housekeeping details. As our regular attendees know, we've been doing remote meetups since early 2020. We're getting this question a lot. We are monitoring the whole COVID-19 situation closely. We are hoping to organize some in-person events this year. We're just going to keep a close eye on it, safety first, but stay tuned to our meetup page and Twitter channel for updates on upcoming events. Next month is our group's 10th birthday. We're going to be celebrating part of 24 Hours of UX. It's a global event. It's third year. And this event's going to be at an interesting time. It's going to be 5 p.m. on June 8th, which is an unusual day and time for us. So definitely pay attention to that. Hangzhou is going to be talking about salary negotiation for designers. And again, we'll be on at 5 o'clock, which is like the 13th hour of the 24-hour event. And it goes around the globe, time zone by time zone for 24 hours. So we're really excited to be able to participate again this year. Tonight's talk will be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel. If you have questions this evening, please post them in chat. And we will do Q&A at the end of the session. And also, if you're hiring, if you're looking to hire someone or looking for help with something, feel free to put that information in chat as well so that others can check it out and see what positions or help you're looking for. And finally, if you would like to share your thoughts about tonight's event on social media, our Twitter accounts are on the screen right now. NoVA UX Meetup is the group's handle. Dori's is Dori Kellner. Mine is Jim Lane Nova. Feel free to tweet or post to Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever you like. So tonight we are going to welcome Dori Kellner back, who's spoken back, was it 2016 or 18? I'm trying to remember which year it was.
It was a long time ago.
It was a while ago, yeah. And she joins us tonight to do a talk about Imposter Syndrome. A lot of interest in this topic. It's really a great time to be talking about this. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to Dori. Again, if you have questions, we'll take Q&A at the end. Just put your questions in chat, and we will cover as many as we can at the end of her talk. Sounds good? All right, fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and the screen is yours.
Hey, thanks, Jim. Okay, just give me one moment to share my screen out. Welcome, everyone. So I shouldn't be teaching this. Every time I speak, that little voice pops up. Every time I teach a class, that little voice pops up. And every time I get a new client, that little voice pops up. That little voice that says, who do you think you are that you can do this? That voice that tells me I am not enough. And that little voice is fear. It's fear that I'm not smart enough. It's fear of making mistakes. And it's fear of people judging me. Fear of being found out. This is imposter syndrome. And I'm not alone in that fear. 70% of successful people, 75% of executive women, 80% of CEOs, and 84% of entrepreneurs report that they have felt like imposters. So my name is Dori Kellner, and I coach mindfulness at my company, Insightful Culture. And I'm also co-founder of Sleight of Hand Studios. We're a Drupal agency that we started over 20 years ago. So I would consider this a highly successful skill portfolio. And I was curious, how can I hold on to this fear of imposterism, even when my experience proves that I am capable? So feelings of self-doubt and personal incompetence that persist despite your education, your experience, and your accomplishments is imposter syndrome. So I recently had to go recertify at my Red Cross training, and I drove into Fairfax for the training. I had done this before. I've trained online, I've trained in person, and I turned off the car and walked into the parking lot, and this fear hit me. And I felt like I should already know what I came there to learn. And all these butterflies started coming up. So imposterism can hit us at all different times of our lives for all different reasons. We want to prove that we're capable and worthwhile to gain respect and admiration from others. We set our standard for success so high that we can't attain it. And this all leads to a sense of futility or paralysis. Maybe we see our successes as luck. We're in the right place at the right time. And we try to hide any imperfection that we see within ourselves by not engaging in situations where we may be found out. So I'm going to start this session off with a short video. And it's going to discuss the research that came about to describe what imposter syndrome really is. And this video describes it in a very good way that is easy to understand. And once we are done with the video, we're going to dive into some of your personal experiences with imposter syndrome and talk about how we can overcome our fears. Going to move into the video now. Let's get it loaded. There we go.
Even after writing 11 books and winning several prestigious awards, Maya Angelou couldn't escape the nagging doubt that she hadn't really earned her accomplishments. Albert Einstein experienced something similar. He described himself as an involuntary swindler whose work didn't deserve as much attention as it had received. Accomplishments at the level of Angelou's or Einstein's are rare, but their feeling of fraudulence is extremely common. Why can't so many of us shake feelings that we haven't earned our accomplishments, or that our ideas and skills aren't worthy of others' attention? Psychologist Pauline Rose Clance was the first to study this unwarranted sense of insecurity. In her work as a therapist, she noticed many of her undergraduate patients shared a concern. Though they had high grades, they didn't believe they deserved their spots at the university. Some even believed their acceptance had been an admissions error. While Clance knew these fears were unfounded, she could also remember feeling the exact same way in graduate school. She and her patients experienced something that goes by a number of names: imposter phenomenon, imposter experience, and imposter syndrome. Together with colleague Suzanne Imes, Clance first studied imposterism in female college students and faculty. Their work established pervasive feelings of fraudulence in this group. Since that first study, the same thing has been established across gender, race, age, and a huge range of occupations, though it may be more prevalent and disproportionately affect the experiences of underrepresented or disadvantaged groups. To call it a syndrome is to downplay how universal it is. It's not a disease or an abnormality, and it isn't necessarily tied to depression, anxiety, or self-esteem. Where do these feelings of fraudulence come from? People who are highly skilled or accomplished tend to think others are just as skilled. This can spiral into feelings that they don't deserve accolades and opportunities over other people. And as Angelou and Einstein experienced, there's often no threshold of accomplishment that puts these feelings to rest. Feelings of imposterism aren't restricted to highly skilled individuals either. Everyone is susceptible to a phenomenon known as pluralistic ignorance, where we each doubt ourselves privately, but believe we're alone in thinking that way because no one else voices their doubts. Since it's tough to really know how hard our peers work, how difficult they find certain tasks, or how much they doubt themselves, there's no easy way to dismiss feelings that we're less capable than the people around us. And
There is no easy way to dismiss the feelings that we are less capable than the people around us. So how did we get here in the first place? It often comes down to your environment. Maybe your family felt that it was really important to be naturally intelligent. Have anybody heard, oh, you're so smart? Do we say that to our kids? You're so smart. And instead of saying you're so smart, we don't say, I see you put a lot of effort into this. So telling our kiddos, you're so smart, this can have a long-term impact and create more imposterism generationally. Maybe you had a strong need to please people to get approval of your accomplishments. Maybe you received mixed messages about achievement. And maybe you work in a competitive workspace that diminishes the importance of asking questions. You know, we live in a culture that reinforces this toxic perspective that you're born with your abilities. And this leads us to saying you either have it or you don't. And so you learn to hide all these struggles and you focus on trying to be infallible instead of being open about your abilities and allowing for challenges to become opportunities to learn and to grow. And we never get the message that we don't have to be afraid of being challenged. And there's a larger cultural issue at play here as well. We believe it's better to fake our knowledge than show our truth. And this is particularly true if you feel like an outsider or you're part of a marginalized group. But in general, most people would rather just take a lot of notes in a meeting and look things up later than to just speak up and admit that they don't know something. And this culture allows imposterism to fester. And social media and our technology add to this expectation that you always have to portray yourself as happy and successful, even if you feel unhappy and afraid for the future. So you might present a public image that's very different than your private self in order to meet some social or workplace expectation. And there is great societal pressure to always have it all together and be confident. And that itself creates a sense of being fraudulent. So I'm going to flash some experiences on the screen, and I'd like you to take a moment to read each one and honestly assess which apply to you. I dismiss positive feedback and compliments and overreact to negative feedback. I hold myself to insanely high standards. I think my success is due to luck. I don't feel that I deserve success or praise. I'm a workaholic. I hold myself to high standards and will do everything possible not to make mistakes. I'm afraid I'll be found out as a fraud. So I'm sure many of those rang true to many of you tonight. And then looking at this screen, you can see these are the thoughts associated with imposter syndrome, that inner critic, negativism, the doubt, the shame and fear. Imposter syndrome feeds the fantasy of perfectionism. It makes you lose perspective of what it takes to feel good about yourself. Now, there are two sides to imposterism. Sorry. Excuse me a minute. I have lost my way. There are two sides to imposterism. One is that you see yourself as a failure if you're unable to meet these perfectionist goals that you've set for yourself. So your fear of failure is an underlying motive. So to reduce the risk of failure, you may overwork in order to compensate for that. But on the flip side, you might also be frightened that your success can lead to greater expectations from other people around you. And in her research, Clance stated that imposters feel uncertain about their ability to maintain their current level of performance, and so they're reluctant to accept additional responsibility. So you might be afraid to go after a promotion. You might worry that if you take on too much, somebody will find out that you're a phony. So to reduce the risk of failure, you may keep from stepping out of your comfort zone. And you may develop these coping mechanisms to manage your anxiety, but you do pay a price for them. You might work too hard to prove yourself. You might turn down opportunities for advancement or to learn new skills. Now, women are notorious at this. If a woman sees a job description and she doesn't meet 100% of the criteria, she's not going to apply for that advancement. Whereas men tend to apply if they meet only about 40% of the requirements. So these coping mechanisms hold us back, and they can lead to additional stress in our lives. And our coping mechanisms also don't align with business objectives. So Dr. Valerie Young, who is an internationally renowned expert on imposter syndrome, said that anyone who leads, manages, trains, or mentors other people need to be aware of it. It's not a self-help topic, it's a business imperative. The behaviors associated with imposter syndrome will have associated costs for the employee and the organization. So you're actually holding other people back in the organization as well as yourself. So Dr. Young has identified 5 types of imposters, and knowing which category you fall into means you can develop the right tools to manage it. So we're going to go through these 5 types now, and you might find that you resonate with one of them, or you might find that you bounce back and forth between a couple of them, and that's perfectly okay. Just notice what resonates with you. So the perfectionist. Did you know somebody in high school who would get like a 99 out of 100 on an exam and was absolutely devastated and went around wondering what was wrong with them, and they beat themselves up over it? So this is the perfectionist. I happen to have sat next to this person throughout my high school years, and it was very frustrating to sit with somebody who did so well and yet didn't believe in themselves. So you might forget to make a minor point in a presentation and you beat yourself up on it over it, and you want to be flawless all the time. Just like a few moments ago when I lost my place in my slides and they blanked out on the screen, the perfectionist would not tolerate that kind of behavior. The next person is the expert. This is a person that feels that their knowledge is what is important. They feel they should always know everything. They should read more books, they should take more classes, they should get more certificates. And this really can hold you back from getting a promotion or going for advancement because you never feel qualified enough to move ahead. The soloist feels that if they're praised for something that somebody else helped them with, that they don't deserve it. So they don't think it counts because they didn't do it all by themselves. And a soloist ends up taking a lot longer to complete their tasks because they're really hesitant to ask for assistance. The natural genius. This is the person who thinks intelligence must be inherent to them. They think they should have been born knowing how to be a leader, knowing how to be the best UX person on the team, knowing how to code, whatever it might be. And the fact that sometimes they have to struggle to master something new in their minds, that proves that they are an imposter. So things get tough, they have to work at it, and then they discount their own knowledge. And finally, there's the superhuman. This is the person who feels they must excel in every role they play in their lives. So not only do they have to be perfect in their career, but they also have to be a perfect parent and a perfect partner and a perfect volunteer in the community, all at the same time. So those are the 5 types of imposters, and we need to get out of this cycle of imposterism. Imposterism, I'm going to define here as the gap between your actual performance and your ideal standard. So that gap, that's your imposter syndrome. Okay. And imposterism interferes with your ability to accept that you have achievements, that you've done really positive things in your life, and this starts to impact your psychological well-being. So you end up with burnout, emotional exhaustion, loss of motivation. Your achievement may even start to drop, and you may even feel guilt and shame. And all of this gets reinforced every time you go through this cycle of imposterism. And the best way to overcome this is to bring awareness to the narratives in your head. All the stories and the patterns that you carry with you for your whole life. How do we learn how to detach from them? Because only by questioning those stories, those beliefs in your head, can you weaken your imposter attachment rather than enforcing it. The only way out is to start to think differently. So there is no magic pill here, and you are not going to walk out of the session today and say, I'm cured of imposterism, I know what to do. Okay? But we can turn to what is called mindset theory to help you to change how you think about imposter syndrome. And mindset theory is a set of ideas that's based on whether or not you believe that you're born with a fixed set of abilities, or do you believe that you have the capacity to grow? The beliefs that you hold about your intelligence can influence your motivation, your attitude, and your behavior. So let's see what mindset theory is. If you believe that your abilities are fixed, you probably hear it in your head, these things like, I should be able to do that. I should know what to do next. I shouldn't have done that. Lots of should talk, lots of black and white, right and wrong thinking. And that might resonate very heavily with some of you tonight. You don't necessarily avail yourself of learning opportunities because you equate learning with being imperfect. If I have to learn something, that means I'm not perfect to begin with. So maybe you're not looking for opportunities to grow. You probably see challenges as obstacles to avoid so that people won't see you as a failure. And you become a victim of your own mind, blaming yourself for any shortcomings. However, if you embrace a growth mindset, you begin to believe that you have the ability to develop your potential, that you're more likely to focus on doing so when you have that mindset. You see challenges and feedback as opportunities for growth, and you value effort and motivation to learn. So embracing a growth mindset is going to allow you to make very small, long-lasting changes to how you think about your own intelligence. So when you commit to developing this growth mindset, you're giving yourself space to become something else, not just to be whatever you are now. When you practice activities that lead to a growth mindset, you will begin to see the success in overcoming imposter syndrome. So we're going to discuss those 5 types of imposters again, and how each one of those imposters can shift their perspective and start to reframe your thinking to help you to manage your imposter syndrome. So let's start with the perfectionist. Now, perfectionists are super intense, and you don't really have a reality-based assessment of your capabilities. You continuously drive harder and harder. And I'm not going to tell you not to be a perfectionist. So right there, I'm not going to tell you to stop. I really appreciate people who care about their work. So I'm not going to say don't care about your work, but I am going to ask you to remember that your perfectionism is probably going to slow you down, and it's also going to slow down your team. So you're interfering with other people's business priorities. And I have absolutely seen this in the workplace where someone feels like the report that they're doing has to be so perfect on the first try that it comes in 3 weeks late. And they were expected to work on 2 other projects during that time, and everyone's waiting for the work. So you're really starting to impact other people's resources. What I invite you to do then is to start to identify what it will take. What is the reasonable amount of effort it will take to get a job done? So when you get a new task, that's how I'm asking you to reframe it. What is good enough? So I'm not saying do shoddy work. I'm just saying notice that gap between where your mind goes to perfectionism and what is good enough for this particular job. And that's going to depend. It's going to depend on budget. It's going to depend on the criticality of the work. It's going to depend on how many other people are working on the project and what the deadlines are. It's going to depend on a lot of things, but at least just to start to slow down and say to yourself, oh, it depends. Now, for the expert, if you were at the top of your high school class, you were like me, you went off to a nice college and there were all these really smart people around you. And wow, a lot of them were really smarter than I was. And I'm surrounded by all these exceptional people. And I started to doubt my own talent, right? Remember in the video, she talked about how everyone thinks that everyone has the same level of talent as they do. So you begin to pursue knowledge for knowledge's sake. You start to think, oh, I've got to catch up with everyone here. But you know what? You can't possibly know everything. School is for learning. You can learn new things. You've proven that to everyone. Someone once said that you can never get to the end of the internet. There really is no expectation that you know everything. So your reframe is to say, I don't need to know everything. Other people may have the knowledge that I need. If the soloist resonates with you, it's really important to tell yourself that you need to include other people in your work. You absolutely cannot work in a vacuum. If you have trouble with this, one thing that's really helpful is to ask for some experience in resource planning. As a project manager, we were taught that we need to balance time, money, people, and quality. And if you're the kind of person that tends to work alone, see if you can find someone to help you learn how to plan resources. So you can see, well, if we have more money, we can do it this way. If we have more people, we can do it that way. If we have more time, we can do it this other way. Gee, there are options. And you start to include other people. When you get support from other people, guess what? They might know more than you, and you can learn something from them. Or maybe they have a different perspective from you that you haven't considered. Or maybe you can help them grow and develop. So it's just like our use cases where you should be going out and talking to the community of people who are going to use our products. And having more voices in the room helps improve that use case. So that is what this is about for you. If this resonates with you, then you need to tell yourself it is important to include others in your work. For the natural genius, this is a person that really benefits from moving from that fixed mindset into the growth mindset. It isn't a failure if you have to work on mastering a task. So this is your reframe. Your challenge is an opportunity for growth. If you start a new project, I invite you to maybe keep a log each week. Here are all the new terms that I'm learning. Here are all the new people I'm working with. Here are the new processes that I have to understand. And then maybe meet each week with your supervisor or a coworker and talk about the new things, because what this will do is to help you normalize the knowledge gap that you have. Just being able to say, it's okay to have something new in my life, and write it down and discuss it with someone. For the superhuman, note that attempting to be the best in every role that you're engaged in is not required. You're just going to keep setting yourself up for failure because nobody is perfect at all these different roles. And not only that, this sends out a really unhealthy message. So if you're a supervisor and you have people reporting up to you, or you have kiddos, what message are you sending to them if you say you have to be perfect at everything? You're just going to create more imposters, more people who are stressed out, or who have a feeling like they have to be perfect at everything they do. So for the superhuman, the reframe is to slow down and set some healthy boundaries. Know when to say no to people and to delegate. If this is you, just start to delegate to others, and they'll start to feel valued as well. So delegation isn't a burden when it's done properly. It just frees you and keeps you from getting set up for burnout. So challenging these negative thought patterns and beliefs about yourself allows you to separate your feelings from the actual facts. It helps you discover new ways of relating to yourself and to other people. So it's all about the reframing. It's all about understanding, how can I think differently about myself? And your brain is capable of developing these new ways of thinking. And this is called neuroplasticity. This is the ability for your brain to change and develop new neural pathways. And this is how we change our behaviors and habits. So over time, and it takes about 8 weeks of regularly working on changing your behavior, that you start to see a difference. So we're going to discuss now some really effective ways to change your perspective, no matter what type of imposterism you experience. And then once you practice this on a regular basis, you can begin to manage your imposter syndrome. And I'll tell you, it's never going to go away completely, but when you change your relationship to it, you're going to change how you manage it. And that is going to be such a huge relief to you. So first, give it a name. It's called imposterism. You see that it's more common than you think when you name it. When something has a name, it means other people are experiencing it as well. And at least everyone in here is either experiencing it or is here because they have a coworker who they want to help who's experiencing it. And I guarantee you, go back out in your lives and you'll find out this is true. So first, give it a name. Then start talking to people. Feedback from other people is going to help you learn that they feel the same way you do, and it's going to help normalize your fears. You're not alone, and we're all afraid that we're going to have this conversation with a friend or a coworker or a mentor or a colleague, and that they're going to say, of course, you don't know what you're doing. What are you thinking? Now, has anyone here ever said that to their friends? No, you've never said it to your friends, and they're not going to say it to you. What we say to our friends is, you've got this. So right before I started this session a couple of weeks ago at a conference, I got a text message, and somebody actually sent me a text message that said, you got this. And it was great because it reinforced that feeling that I'm ready for this. I can deal with it. I am not an imposter. Next, many of us dismiss the compliments that we get in our lives. And this is a tough one. You may not think you deserve that compliment. So the next time somebody pays you a compliment, gives you positive feedback, thank them. Just say, thank you. I appreciate that. It might not feel like it's enough. It might feel phony, but then again, it's helping change those neural pathways in your head to this acceptance that you are enough. You're not a fraud. So listen to those words and give yourself the space to really appreciate the compliment. Now, I also suggest that you write down these compliments and store them someplace in a folder, in an email. Some people write stickies and put them all over their cube or their laptop. And I think we saw that if you watch Saturday Night Live this weekend, there was a joke about one of the stars having this all over his office, all over his mirror, all these positive affirmations. But the next time you start to feel your imposterism and you look at these affirmations, you're going to start to change the way you think about yourself. So even if you're not experiencing imposter syndrome, lots of us have that inner critic in our heads. The one that says, you know, you did this wrong, or you shouldn't have said that, or you should have done that differently. And, you know, it's okay. We can't necessarily change this, but what we can understand is that it's human. Making mistakes is proof of your humanity. Your self-doubt is proof that you're not a perfect human, and that's okay. We're all works in progress. And if you only remember the mistakes that you make, you need to start practicing thinking about what's good in your life, because mistakes really stick with us. The negative, our brains are wired for the negative. Our brains are wired for fear because millions of years ago, that's what was necessary to keep us alive. And it doesn't serve us any longer. So anytime that you start having these critical thoughts about yourself, I invite you to take out a pen or a pencil. So not your laptop, nothing digital, actual physical writing. So you're having a critical thought, write down 3 reasons why that thought is wrong. 3 reasons why that's a lie. And once you start to see this evidence, it's going to change your bias towards negativity. It allows you to start paying attention differently to what you think. Taking that space to break out and say, no, this isn't true. I am not that person. Now, this next recommendation is one that can actually help you with all the ones that came before. I highly recommend starting a meditation practice. Becoming aware of your breath and your body can really calm down your nervous system. And this gives you the space that you need to become more aware of the stories that are running in your head. And you'll start to see patterns in those stories. The stories and patterns aren't true, but you keep perpetuating them in your mind. You know, this things like, you know, I'm not good enough to do this, or why in the world am I applying for that promotion? Okay. If you can detach from these stories and patterns, if you can accept this, then you'll end up with all this spaciousness that you need to do all the reframing we just talked about. It will help you reframe. It will help you quiet your inner critic, and it'll help you embrace the growth mindset. So what I do when I'm struggling with a task and I say, I can't do this, or I don't want to do this, I have the space to stop and step back and say, why do I believe this is true? Okay. And that meditation practice gave me that space to not be reactive and to notice that I'm starting to get out of control, and to actually pause and say, okay, wait a second. Why am I thinking this way? Why do I think this is true? So a long-term meditation practice goes a long way in helping you to reframe and to embrace the growth and the questioning of your mind and your patterns. And finally, when you believe you're an imposter, you're actually sending out signals that you don't trust yourself. Okay? Subliminally, other people are picking up on this and they start to think, why should I trust you if you don't trust yourself? That's a big question. Why should other people trust you if you don't trust yourself? And this comes from the subconscious. It comes from the primal part of your brain called the amygdala. And people can sense each other's trust. So knowing how to build your self-compassion is really important. You need to learn how to embrace self-compassion over self-judgment. And qualities of compassion can absolutely be cultivated. There are loving kindness meditations that you can learn to practice self-compassion. You can learn to accept yourself as human. And each day, take some time out to say, who am I today? Because you'll find that you're different from one day to the next. And you'll open up some connection to the human experience and break your sense of isolation. So each day, say to yourself, one kind thing. If that's all you can muster, take time out of your day, maybe even put it on your calendar. One good thing about yourself. So when I hear that little voice in my head, the one that tells me I'm not enough, I follow these 3 steps. First, I notice it's happening. Just like when I was at the Red Cross Center and I wasn't sure that I was ready enough to go to a training that was supposed to be the thing that readied me. Just being aware gives us the space to remember to say, why do I believe this? Why do I feel like this? Then I don't listen to the little voice. I write down the 3 things as to why the little voice isn't telling the truth. I find evidence in the compliments that I've received in the past. So one thing I heard recently came from Sharon Salzberg. Some of you may be familiar with her as a world-renowned meditation teacher and founder of the Insight Meditation Society in Massachusetts. And she said, when the little voice arises, that inner critic, she gives it a name. So I did a session the other day with other meditation teachers who were experiencing imposter syndrome. And someone in my session the other day said, yeah, I do that. I call my inner critic Jamal. So it was great. Give it a name. And then sit the inner critic down for a cup of tea. Maybe say, Jamal, go over there. Have a cup of tea. I got this. I'm good. So I start talking to my inner critic and I tell it to chill. And I don't listen to what they're saying. And then finally, I take action and I move ahead because there are consequences to listening to that little voice. I want to maintain a growth mindset and I want to see the challenges in my life as opportunities. I want to see that they are positive and human. And if I have a misstep, if I make a mistake, that it's okay. The world is not going to come to an end. This helps me start to build trust in myself, that I know what I'm doing. And I say to myself, I can do this. So this is really about reinforcing those connections in my brain, taking the space to be aware, taking the time to tell my inner critic that I'm not going to listen to him, and taking action and proving to myself that I know I can do this. Okay. So I want to hear your stories about how you're coping with imposter syndrome. I want to know whether this was helpful to you. I want to answer any questions that you have. And I ask you to keep in touch with me because I'm going to continue this as a topic of research for myself. And I want to understand how you're relating to the information that I'm sharing. So I'm going to leave this up for just a couple more seconds in case you want to write down any of my contact information. And yes, that is a phone number. And you are welcome to call me and you are welcome to text me. I would love to hear from you. So I'm going to turn this back over to our hosts and see if there are any questions that anybody has.
Fantastic talk. Thank you so much. That's so incredibly important. I've had this conversation so many times with designers on my teams. I'm really glad you could share this. We do have a question. Sophia, do you want to ask your question or would you like me to? I think Sophia had the only question. Let's see. Oh, thank you. Well, I'll go ahead and ask it. Sophia asks, what if when the self-doubt is actually coming from a real issue someone is facing, such as struggling to cope with and navigate sexism or racism in the workplace?
That's a wonderful question, Sophia. And in fact, I had a very similar question the last time I did this session. There is social injustice. You're not inventing it in your head, and it's extremely difficult to get past. Earlier in my talk, I mentioned that it is very difficult if you are in a group that struggles to be a part of what people consider the norm. I have fought sexism my entire career. I started in tech, I hate to say how many years ago, but it's many, many decades. And I was one of the early women in tech, and I definitely did suffer from this, and it definitely did add to my imposter syndrome. I can look back on this now and know that sexism, it definitely made me shrink and diminish my value and the value that I had in my head. So while we cannot necessarily use anything I said today to change how other people think, we do need to show up owning our own self, knowing that we are competent, knowing that we are just as good as everyone else in the room. It's very hard to remember that when we're marginalized. And if the only thing that you can do in a situation like that is to recognize your own value, that can help you through this. And I think that once other people see that you stand up for your own values and that you're not afraid to speak for yourself, that can help. But truly, this is a very real thing. And I don't want to pretend that anything I said today is going to help with the societal problems that we have.
We have another question from Tony, who asks, how would you suggest bringing up feelings of imposterism to your manager at work, if at all?
Great question, Tony. And I'm going to answer with, it depends. So I'm taking that space to think about what that answer should be. There are work environments in which managers do not accept that we are human. And from my background, again, I've worked in places like that and I've left them. Places where people basically see you as a resource and don't really want to hear how you think or feel about anything personal. If you're in such a space, your manager is not going to be open to talking to you about this. But if you're in a space where you have a good relationship with your manager and you can bring up a real life example of this, not talk about it in the abstract, but basically perhaps you want to apply for another position in your department or for a promotion. This might be a good opportunity to bring it up and explain that, I have trouble accepting my talents or my ability for advancement. But I think you can reframe a lot of these things rather than just talking to them. You might want to talk to somebody who you have a more personal relationship about your imposterism and sort of practice a conversation before you go to a manager. And then instead of just saying to your manager, I have imposter syndrome, so I'm not applying for this job or this promotion, use the things that you learned today about yourself and talk in those terms. Say, hey, I'm a real perfectionist and I only meet 3 out of the 5 criteria for this position, but I really feel it's an opportunity for me to grow. What do you think about me applying for this job? So being able to say it in that way instead of turning it into something that might sound like a negative, because it isn't. This is a real human way of feeling, but use some of the techniques that we talked about today, identify which of those types of imposters you are, and use that to your benefit to turn it around and say, hey, I'm a really intelligent person who has the ability to do this. What do you think?
Fantastic. Why don't we turn the slides off and invite, if folks want to turn their cameras on, we can all see each other and see if we have any more questions that anybody wants to ask.
Yeah, feel free to just jump in and unmute yourselves.
Yep, you should all be able to turn your cameras on and unmute if you like. Yeah, any final questions for Dori?
Hi, Dori. This is Andrew.
Hi, Andrew.
So this is, how can I put this? It's a question, but also a recommendation to anybody who identifies with the perfectionism of type. There was a guy named Tal Ben Sahar who wrote a book called The Pursuit of Perfect. And if there's anybody who is struggling with that type of imposter syndrome, I highly recommend that book because he introduced a new term to my vocabulary called the optimalist. And it ties very closely with that mind shift you were talking about, like, okay, what's good enough versus what's perfect. Has anybody else heard of that? Or Dori, if is that new to you?
No, I'm familiar with that.
Okay. Yeah, I find that I found that term to be impactful for me, to be like, so it's like, okay, it's not perfect, but you know what? I had 3 days to do it. I had X amount of resources, and it is what it is, given what I had. It was just a way to. It just helped me reframe everything, and it's been helping out so far. It's still a challenge, but it's helpful.
Yeah, thank you for that comment and for the book recommendation, Andrew, and feel free to throw that into the chat as well. Yeah, it's not a matter of justifying. So I want to be really clear about that. You don't want to justify that something is good enough because, sometimes you're wrong about how good it is as well. You can go too far in the other extreme, but that idea of being optimal, that it is the right amount of effort for the work that needs to be done, for the time that you were given, for the goals that you're trying to achieve. I love the word optimal in that regard. So thank you for that, Andrew.
I think we have time for another question or two. Any others anyone would like to ask? Maybe one more.
Well, so hi, my name is Sonia. I'm not sure how to ask this, but sometimes in work culture it can be very passive aggressive, this type of thing. So comments like, don't take yourself so seriously. Trying to think of other phrases like that. But, you know, it's very passive, not blatant. And just like how to deal with that, because it's not like you can face it head on, because then it would look aggressive. I did see an Atlantic article one time. It sort of reminds me of this, about the word uppity, and where that phrase came from. It kind of surprised me, but so, sorry, it was it was talking about slave times, and like, know your place. Sorry, I have a cold. But yeah, it was like, know your place in society.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very similar to the first question that we received. It is really difficult when people think that other people have a place. You don't necessarily have to respond to everything that people say to you. When you have your own self-worth and you've kind of worked on your self-doubt, sometimes an environment truly is hostile. Sometimes an environment truly is toxic. And you have to recognize when that is, and that you probably won't change it, and get yourself out of it. It's a tough call, but being an imposter, it's really more in your own head, what you think and how you're relating to yourself and others around you. And if somebody is giving you guidance that is passive aggressive, not to let it derail you. It's not easy, which is why I recommend things like having a meditation practice, because that gives you kind of the spaciousness to go, that person's being passive aggressive to me, I'm not going to listen to them right now. And we all have those people around us, and they're not going to go away. But the idea is to not let them impact your own vision of who you are. Okay. The important thing is to own yourself, own the fact that you don't have to be perfect, that should not be an expectation of you to be perfect, and that you can make mistakes and take feedback from people, positive, feedback, criticism, to take those all in stride. And I think, was there a comment on that? There was a wonderful comment in the chat. I've mostly had to deal with those things from white males at higher work positions. And back in the day, we didn't call it imposter syndrome. It was what it was like for being a young woman of color. So I would totally agree with that. This doesn't necessarily have to do with you being an imposter, unless you let it get to you and you turn it into your own self-worth, instead of seeing that it's coming from other people and their shortcomings. So thank you for that comment in the chat. Very, very on point.
Yes. Fantastic questions. So thank you so much, Dori. Really appreciate you joining us for the talk tonight. Thank you, Danita, for helping out with the event. And thanks everyone for all of the fantastic questions. It is just such an important topic. We're glad you could all join us this evening, and I hope you found the talk enlightening and thoughtful. As I mentioned earlier, next month is our group's 10th birthday. We'll be celebrating as part of 24 Hours of UX. Special date and time, June 8th, 5 p.m. With a talk about salary negotiation for designers, another really interesting, really important topic that doesn't get talked about enough. So be sure to check that out. Information is always available on the Meetup site. If you're interested in giving a talk like this, or a workshop or panel discussion or something, please reach out to us. We would love to talk with you. We do these every month. And thank you so much for joining us this evening. This will be posted on, give us some time, will be posted to our YouTube channel. And we hope to see you all next month or at a future event. Dori, thanks again. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jim. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Thanks,
night.
guys.